this is not I think I know where you're coming from on this. And if, again, Vulcan has a great reputation for its reclamation process, Curls Neck and other locations, again, the water quality there is excellent, the habitat is excellent, the farming activity is excellent. In fact, Dr. Lee Daniels from Virginia Tech looked at our sites and says it's the best reclamation process he's ever seen. He's been in various different countries, has been doing this for over 35 years. We submitted that report. It's part of the file. It's part of our application. I encourage you to look at it. It will answer your questions. This is not going to be a black, dirty pond. And again, we have a 100-foot no-till area around the pond that will have natural growth to capture much of the nitrogen, etc., that's flowing in. We have a closed-loop water system. We're not discharging into the Rappahannock River. This will be a viable pond on that site that can be used for irrigation purposes.
I don't think it is one.
In fact, we've offered it up for water supply purposes.
Mr. Payne, if I could interrupt for a second. I'm sure you gave us these 33 conditions, right?
Worked with staff.
You worked with staff, 30, what? 33. There's one in the back. And I don't know if you memorized them or Mr. Fincham has, but in relation to Mr. Seeley's question, which one of the conditions, because we got these today, which one of these conditions references the pond?
That's all I got, 32.
It's one in the back. 33 is on the back.
Oh, there's
They're
new
double
ones.
sided.
They're brand new.
Are we talking about the
pond that Mr. Seeley's referencing?
talking about water usage for the county, or we're talking about the pond and the reclamation process?
I'm talking about the pond first. I'm going to get to water usage in a second, but I'm going to let everybody else go first. But just as Mr. Seeley was asking you about the pond, in his own intense way, we want to just try to figure out where that was in the conditions, because as he said, if it's not in the conditions and we think of it tomorrow and this passes and we go back to you and say, hey, Charlie, we forgot this, you're going to say, have a nice day, which you have the right to. So we just want to make sure it's referenced in one of the conditions that we're looking at. And that's all. If it is, let me know. If it's not, that's fine. It's double-sided, and we just, we're looking at these which are a little different than what we had before.
I would just, it was part of the original conditions, and I would look at number 16. As you probably know, we've got a reclamation plan that we have to submit to DMME. We also post a significant bond. And we've got to meet certain DEQ water quality standards, which is what Mr. Carroll was talking about. It happened at prior reclamation sites. We have, if we don't meet those requirements, they can revoke our bond, which is a terrible thing, because the next time you go for another bond, it's a stain on your record. So, one, we're required to get that reclamation permit, and secondly, we're required to post that bond. And that's what we're stating here in number 16.
Okay, and 16, as I read it, doesn't necessarily reference, it does not even use the word pond in that paragraph.
But it's part of our reclamation plan. We have no,
Right.
It would be part of our plan that we submit to DMME.
Okay, so but I'm just saying, as I read it, he was asking about pond. I just asked for clarification. There is nothing that says pond in that particular bullet item, but it does say full reclamation plan.
Well, it's actually checkered throughout here. Staff has done a great job. Number 6 also addresses that. The applicant shall reclaim the property in accordance with the standards established by DMME. And this permit, at a minimum, the reclaimed site shall provide for approximately 140 acre plus lake and approximately 232 plus or minus acres of agricultural forest land as shown on the general reclamation plan submitted with the application titled Reclamation of Landscape Plan. Notwithstanding the foregoing, applicable DME permitting requirements shall govern the reclamation process unless conditions imposed in this special exception are more stringent. So when we go to DMME, we will submit as part of our plan this pond, and it will have to meet water quality standards of DEQ, just like all our other reclamation plans.
And in this case, just wanted to make sure we said that.
Yes, sir.
In this case, we've now come to condition 6, which pond, lake, same thing, reference what Mr. Seeley was asking you about.
Correct.
I just want all of us to get on the same page. In particular, I wanted to be on that same page too. So, okay.
Correct.
And I'm back to the closed loop system. take any pond, any body of water that just sits, nothing flows in, nothing flows out. You're going to end up with inversions every fall, every spring, and you end up with the big, thick green algae on top that's unmanageable. Just tell me how you guys are managing that.
Mr. Seeley, we showed you photographs of the Curls Neck farming operation. It's been mined for probably 50 years, the history of that on the James. Almost all of those ponds that you saw on those reclamation photographs have no outfall. They are agricultural ponds that are created in the very same fashion that they would be created here. They have rainwater inflow, they have that natural buffer around them that Mr. Payne was talking about, the no-till zones, and that's where the empirical, the actual factual data on water quality testing that was submitted was from that site and other sites that have been reclaimed for a number of years, and they show, again, exemplary water quality.
Mr. Seeley, why don't we describe the closed-loop system for you? Would that be helpful as well?
Sure.
One of the operational managers, Perrin Bean, deals with this all the time. I'm sure he can explain it to you, how it works.
Well, your closed-loop system mainly deals with the washing and the processing of the material. When you pump the clean water from the pond, you pump it through the plant, it washes the material, and it goes through a series of ponds where it settles out and then turns around and gets recycled right back. So we're constantly using that same water moving all the time. As far as your large 140-acre lake, you've got groundwater there that's flowing all the time in the ground. Yes, there's no outfall. It's in one spot, but that water is moving inside that pond all the time. So we have, like Mr. Carroll said, we have several pictures where we've got 100-acre lakes similar to this that we've done, same principle, that meet these water qualities consistently.
Let me get this, make sure I got this right. Groundwater flows through, and that's actually what keeps the water from becoming stagnant, or for a lack of a better word. But we're talking about, you're now claiming 60 to 80% of the mineral runoff will be in that pond.
At the end of the day, that's right.
But we're then still mixing that with groundwater as time goes on.
That's correct. And water that's falling from the sky. That's correct.
I understand, but I'm still back to the nutrient load that's in that pond.
Mm-hmm.
What am I missing? I mean, if it's nutrient loaded, it doesn't stay there. It's still going someplace. It's going to the river. It's going to the groundwater table. It's going someplace. It doesn't stay there. It's not a closed body that doesn't move.
It's not going in the river. We're not discharging into the river.
But I think anybody would tell you that any groundwater there makes its way to the river.
You got to let them finish answering. I mean, whether it's the answer you like or not, you got to let them finish answering before you.
That's fine.
I would just state at the end of the day, that pond will meet DEQ requirements for water quality.
We still have a nutrient load in that pond. Is that not true?
Bruce? We'll have our engineer answer that question.
That'd be great.
My name is Bruce Reese. I'm a professional engineer in the Commonwealth. I think there may be a misconception on how this reduction is going to occur. A large part of this reduction is simply taking 140 acres out of crop production. It therefore no longer generates nutrients. So there's a huge reduction there, and it's not that all 80% of this reduction comes from water flowing into the pond. The pond itself contributes to the reduction of those nutrients that reach it. And what happens is those nutrients reach the pond and settle out. And there's a chemical process and a biological process and a physical process, all of which help reduce the amount of nutrients that are going to leave the site. The other thing that happens is we have buffers around the pond. So there is plant uptake of these nutrients. We get credit for that. Not every drop of water that falls on the remaining farm will get into the pond. Some water will naturally drain to the river as it drains to the river now. And there is a 100-foot RPA buffer that will, again, eliminate nutrients as the water flows through the buffer area.
Now, can I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
As an engineer, a farm of that size, farmer uses chemicals, fertilizer, whatever. Do more chemicals go into the river from the farming operation or the mining operation? Or is it close?
It's not even close. It's absolutely from the farming operation.
Okay,
We
you,
use no chemicals in our process.
no, well, I'm just asking, but sure was kind of quick the way the lawyers jumped up to talk to you before you answered, but
No,
He's not a lawyer.
I did, well, yeah, but okay. I just wanted to, I mean, you're an engineer.
without a question, the farming operation would contribute considerably more. And again, the Commonwealth outlines exactly how much nutrients are generated by various operations, including farming. And the mining operation does not generate pollutants in and of itself. The end result of the mining operation will significantly reduce pollutants because, again, it's taken 140 acres of land that was formerly cropland out of crop production, and therefore it's not generating pollutants. And the pond itself is what we call a best management practice, which reduces pollutants further. And so I think the number is, the way we have calculated this is, and I don't have the exact number, so I'm going to use hypotheticals, but if there was 100 pounds of phosphorus going into the river before the mining operation, there will only be approximately 20 pounds of phosphorus going into the river post the mining operation. So we have an 80% reduction of the amount of pollutants going into the river.
Okay.
Let me read you something, because that's not what's written. What it says is the project will ensure to protect environmentally sensitive areas as shown on the plan, including after the reclamation process of reducing by at least 80% the runoff of nutrient, including phosphorus products, into the Rappahannock River. It says the entire project.
Which one are you on?
That's
And
correct.
80% of the nutrients.
That's
Well, he-
correct.
He
That,
just
that
said,
doesn't mean that zero will leave the site. It means that 80% of what was leaving the site previously will no longer leave the site.
Of the 145
No,
acres.
of the entire farm. The entire farm.
so your example again, hypothetically,
Oh,
the
no, I
entire
understand.
farm produced 100
100 pounds of
pounds of
phosphorus.
phosphorus. 80% less would be 20.
Yes, sir.
And you're saying that the mining operation will only have 20 pounds of phosphorus based on those hypothetical numbers. Now, what's
Yes,
the
sir.
real numbers?
Yes, sir.
Now, what's the
I
real
can-
numbers?
I could grab the real numbers. I think it's something like 243 pounds of phosphorus per year that leave the site now, and whatever roughly 20% of that is what would 40 pounds approximately. But the
49.
Thank you, sir. The result of eliminating 140 acres from production is a large part of that. And then on top of it, you take a vegetated buffer around the pond and the pond itself, and it is a reduction of pollutants leaving the site, a significant reduction.
Mr. Seeley, it's still your ball.
And I want to ask Mr. Fincham a question while he's down here as well, because talking about this as an impound site, and I want to talk about our water uptake site as well, so if I can get everybody together in one place, it'll be helpful. Our uptake site from
For the
that is-
record, I'm not Joey Sheeble.
I understand. That's why I said Mr. Fincham and not Joey Sheila, because he's not here. How far is our water intake site from this facility?
I thought that was on the map.
I believe in the map Mr. Sheeble provided, it was about 9,200 feet, if I recall.
5,280 feet in a mile,
Yes, sir.
1.7 miles,
Almost 2 miles.
almost 2 miles.
Yes, sir.
Now, for this to be an impound site, we're going to have to run pipe from our intake and buy right-of-ways all the way down to this impound site to put in pipe to make this fillable. True?
If we were using this facility
Yep.
and withdrawing at certain times from the river and transporting that to this impoundment, yes, you would have to construct the necessary piping to take it, the water from your intake to the pond.
And we'd have to buy that right away.
Together with any rights of way. Yes, sir. Sorry,
All the way down.
didn't mean to cut you off, but yes, you're correct.
And according to the discussion we had, the highest probable use of this water is in the other direction. You were there for the discussion.
Well, you have a potential user in Haymount, which is adjacent to or near this property in Skinker's Neck. Beyond that, yes, the option is to go down 301 to the town of Bowling Green,
Or the other direction to another county.
or back to the Route 1 corridor, or back to Spotsylvania County, another county, yes, sir.
Right. So the distance and what we're going to have to cover, we're going to have to put a pipe in the wrong way for almost 2 miles, buy up the right of way to then go the other way. I'm just making sure that I understood the discussion we had when we had this utility discussion for water.
Yes, sir, I think you've laid out the options.
In light of that, and this is where I go back to the impound site and water quality, do we have any engineers, anybody that's told us what the use of this water could be for the ability to have it for drinking water, what we have to do?
I can't answer that question, Mr. Seeley. I think that would need to be directed to utilities.
Because it seems that this hinge, one of the hinge pins in this is that it's water that could be used, but I'm not so sure. And then the next question is that we were told that water could potentially be needed in 5 to 8 years. How long before we would have the 140-acre plus lake/pond?
Well, if I recall the discussions, it's centered around the installation of the intake within 5 to 8 years.
Right.
The actual, as I recall, the estimate for the actual need to construct the treatment plant, the water treatment plant, and to actually withdraw water from the river was in the 30-year time frame. Based upon my recollection is based upon the numbers from the report, the mining activity would cease by the time we were actually planning for the actual construction of the treatment plant or under construction of the treatment plant.
Do we have in the conditions any way of expediting past if the 20-year mark comes and they're not near done and we needed that site? Is there anything in the conditions that gives us that ability to do that?
The suggested condition is for a 20-year permit with the ability to come before the board and request a 5-year extension to that permit. So as it's currently written, the special exception permit would be valid for 20 years with the possibility of a 5-year extension.
But we also talked about sort of horse trading some water from this side of the county.
We don't want everybody to know what we're doing. So,
Well, it's in the package. Okay. Well, if we're going to write it down and we're going to talk about it, then we need to make sure that we're all on the same page because this is the one opportunity.
But I think what Mr. Fincham just said was there is a 20-year project. And at the end of 20 years, the applicant is going to come back and say, we got this 140-acre lake, hole in the ground with water. Oh, by the way, would you let us have another 5 years? Whoever's sitting here 20 years from now may say, no, you can't have it for 5 more years because I want that lake. Maybe, maybe not. Now, there is no condition in here that says the lake actually reverts to the county or the county has first option.
Yes, sir.
I wanted Mr. Payne to say that. Mr. Payne, is that right?
That's correct. And that's condition number 32, I believe.
So, which says that,
What would happen is,
I got it,
say
I just read
let's
it.
say the 20-year period comes, and say we're done, because we believe we'll be done at that point.
Right.
We have to go and obviously get our DMME bond release. We got to make sure the site is reclaimed appropriately, the water quality is good. At that point in time, the county can exercise its option to utilize that site as a water supply.
River water quality is the next thing I want to talk about. Glad you did that.
Okay. I just don't want to, while we're negotiating with other localities
Okay.
about water, I'd like to negotiate with them and not negotiate with the newspapers.
Okay. We have a water intake almost 2 miles from there. You're going to bring in a 300-foot barge and roughly a 95-foot tugboat, is that true, to move this stuff?
275 on the barge.
And how big on the tug?
$65 feet.
Rough tonnage moved tug and barge together?
The material on the barges is about 3,300, 3,500 tons. I don't know exactly what we're trying to answer exactly.
Just looking for numbers first. So rough tonnage moving tug and barge together, what do you got, 3,500 tons?
It's probably a little bit more than that. You include the tug itself, but
It's big, mass-wise.
yeah. But again, as you saw from the presentation the other week, we operate on riverine systems throughout the Chesapeake Bay. They're very much similar to this. In fact, I think you'll find that the Rappahannock navigation would probably be one of the easier navigations that we make.
What's the draft fully loaded?
We only load according to the conditions of the river at the time the transport occurs.
Rough draft.
8.5 to 9 feet. That would be maximum, and you would load lighter. There are other rivers where we actually have got barges that are at 2,000 or 2,200 tons capacity, and we load to 1,200 or 1,800 tons, depending on the conditions of the river at the time.
Looking at the map that I have, the chart that I've got in our board packet, we're looking at water depths as shallow as 13 feet. Other places as deep as, deepest, 17, 20, 29, 35, 37 in the bend. You've got to move a barge and a tug from dead stop. And having been in the Navy and been moved many, many, many times by a tug on a big ship, I can tell you that 60 feet of water still brings up mud chunks in times that people wouldn't imagine. It's a tidal river, and we've got an intake upstream. And I guess I'm a little concerned into what this is going to do to us when we get to that point, and there are screens on that intake, even if we're not using it, that we have to maintain.
I would just offer, Mr. Seeley, that we operate on rivers that have federal navigation depths of 12 feet or 10 feet or 9 feet. It's very common for us to operate on those riverine systems, and been doing it for 30, 40, 50 years, 75 years plus in other locations. So Again, I just would have to go off our experience with that.
I guess what I'm asking is, okay, what does it look like when you start to move the barge? Turbulence-wise in the water and turbidity of the water.
You can let the engineer talk again.
Let me introduce Anthony Glasgow. He's one of our tugboat captains. Anthony is not only a tugboat captain, but he is also a commercial fisherman, lives in Sussex County. Middlesex, excuse me. And his family has also been a commercial fisherman for generations as well. So he's got dual responsibilities and has navigated on this river previously from Rappahannock Farm, so he has experience on it.
Did we get a letter from you, Mr. Gaskins?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I thought it was familiar. All right.
Nice to put a face to the name.
Exactly.
What was your question, sir?
Bottom contour, turbidity, with the tug moving, especially from dead move or parking a barge.
Yeah, we, you know, in the upper river, we're probably only get up about 3 or 4 knots, you know, in the turns, probably from just below Port Royal up. You can't make any time when you're trying to, you know, make your turns and everything. And the Rappahannock is, I guess through 2002 through 2005, we went up to Rappahannock Farms, which I'm not sure what county that's in. It's just above Port Royal. But is your question is how much bottom are we stern or not? Or
On initial movement?
On initial movement, it depends on how deep you take. At 20 foot, we're not going to stir anything. If we're leaving from 12, 15 foot, yeah, we're going to stir the bottom, sure.
What size prop do you think would be on this?
Well, my boat has a 6-foot prop, but we're not going to be coming up there so much as, what boat are we bringing? Captain Ted, she probably has 50-inch wheels.
Variable pitch?
No, sir. No.
Not variable, so it's not a new boat?
Oh, no. This is standard shafts and props.
It's not variable pitch?
Nope.
Okay.
That's a little ritzy for the tug industry.
So explain to us that don't know, variable pitch, I assume, is something that varies or changes.
No,
Right.
they
Which would
change.
mean it would have
Yeah.
more turbulence or less turbulence?
I guess it depends on where you set your pitch on your prop. I have no experience with a variable pitch prop. So.
I don't either, so I was just curious. So I just want to make sure we understand all the questions, or at least the direction the questions are going in.
Right.
And I do have a direction. Oh, no, I do. I'm not done yet. In an email from, when this trail is long, and it looks like it's from Charlie Payne, it talks about sediment deposits and the motion of sediment deposits. And it's an email from the 27th of April of this year. In the last sentence, such would be the case within Black Marsh Farms area. The movement of water stays in the main channel while the flood water slowly backs into the adjoining property. And I'm going to take flood water out and say that the turbulence that's actually generated by, and I'm worried about our water intake, nothing else at this point.
I think that was a question on, I don't have a copy of my email, so I'm not sure of the contents per se, but it sounds as if that was a question about flooding. What's the flooding impact to the adjoining property owners? I believe that's the question. Is that?
Well,
And the sediment that we're now going to have moving in and out.
Sediment moving in and out of?
With just tug moving. You're not going to move a tug and a barge in and out of there every day and not move the bottom around. Come on. There's no way. 12 feet of water, high tide. You think you're off the bottom completely?
The river does a good job of moving sediment every day, so I'm not sure how to answer that question.
Okay.
that was a fair answer.
I'd like to take a break, Mr. Chairman. I need to reorganize some of this.
All righty. I think we'll, you still have more questions?
Sure.
Okay. Why don't we take a, I'll ask ask how long you need rather than guess. 15 minutes?
Sure.
Okay, we'll take a 15 Earth minutes, not supervisor minutes. So I can see it looks like it's almost 10 after. We'll come back at 9:25. Thank you. We'll stand adjourned for a second. Oh, excuse me. Ready? Okay. We'll reconvene. Mr. Seeley, you were asking questions, and we're going to give you a few minutes to wrap up your questions. Make sure you got them all. Mr. Payne, we appreciate your indulgence.
Thank you, Mr.
Seeley.
Chairman.
Can you tell me how many gallons are in the pond/lake left when you're done, 145 acres?
I don't know if utilities has done that evaluation or determination.
Well, there seems to be a dispute as to what the right number is, I guess, in the calculations that some of us have done and what the calculation is in here.
So I think, Mr. Payne, we've got two different numbers. You give us your number, and I think Mr. Seeley's going to reply or respond with a different number, and we'll determine which one we believe is the reality.
We haven't had a chance to get through this document completely, but looks like it's 1.75 billion gallons is what's been estimated at 145 acres by the county.
And the number that we came up with was 34 million gallons based on 40 feet deep, 145 acres.
I'm just reading your document.
And I understand that's, I'm asking you guys for what your calculation was for what was actually in the hole.
Here you go. Oh, I see. Okay. You're my favorite guest. Can you calculate the amount of gallons of water?
We don't know. The calculation I just did was 472 million gallons. And that is 145 acres at approximately...
You need to come a little closer. And start from the beginning. The calculation you just did was?
472 million gallons. And that
400.
was at 145 acres, 10 feet deep, at 7.48 gallons per cubic foot.
I love engineers.
472 million.
So he's got, at 10 feet deep,
Yes, sir.
it's really a volumetric
Yes.
calculation. You calculate the area that 145 acres would equal, then you multiply that by the 10-foot depth. So
Yes.
you came up with
72 million gallons.
472 million.
Yes, sir.
So I'm guesstimating that 140 acres is 47 million square feet.
It is, well, 145 times 43,560, which is the number of square feet per acre, times the average depth of 10 feet. And it may be deeper in places, but it's obviously shallower at the perimeter.
Right.
So I assume 10 feet deep. And then there's roughly 7.5 gallons per cubic foot.
Okay.
So it's just a straight multiplication.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Payne, I'm going to ask him to come up as much time as I can, so don't let him sit down.
No, we were just talking about average depth. That was all.
Okay. Mr. Seeley,
I'm going to wrap up for now.
I'm gonna trust the engineer.
I'm not even going to dispute it's a lot less than the number that we have.
That was calculated by the county utility
By the
department.
county utility, we have 1.75 billion. They have
Right.
472 million.
So we're roughly 10% less.
No.
4
We're
billion?
Three times.
4 billion and 400 million. That's not 10%.
It's important to understand he took a depth. Typically our depths are 10 to 20 feet. So, once we're in there and mining it, we'll know exactly at that point in time in the future. So, in fairness, it would be possibly double that number that we just provided you. It could very well be an average of 20 feet in depth.
Okay. All right. Mr. Seeley said he's going to wrap up. Mr. Popowitz, I understand you would like to go last. So, Mr. Underwood, you had some questions?
Yes, I do.
Mr. Bachmeister, you're here? Okay.
I have a question for Mr. Roper first. Mr. Roper, I'm sorry, the other gentleman. Is it Roper?
Mr. Carroll.
Mr. Carroll. Mr. Carroll, how long have you been working for Vulcan?
15 years.
How many of the reclamation projects have you worked on directly?
Well, before I came to work for Vulcan, I was affiliated with the mining industry here in the Commonwealth of Virginia, actually represented that industry, was actually on the Commonwealth of Virginia's Abandoned Mine Reclamation Advisory Committee, had worked with that staff on doing reclamation projects on a variety of different types of reclamation sites across the Commonwealth, and before that, I was actually in charge of the state regulatory program in North Carolina over the mining industry and had over 800 mines in the state. So I trained inspectors and provided regulatory overprint for the industry in that state.
Okay, I guess my question is, how many of those reclamation projects would you hang your hat on and say, this is our best and this is our worst?
I think we try to do our best on every one of those.
I understand
Mr.
that.
Underwood, and I think the examples that we showed you with the photographs are indicative of the type and quality of the reclamation that we've won. We've actually won a number of state awards, not industry awards, but state awards and national awards that the state has taken our sites and put them up against national competition from other states, and we've won those awards as well. So, I think we do a very good job.
And I saw the pictures and I agree. I'm just wondering how many ugly ducklings are out there?
I would hope that we'd have none.
I would hope so too, but
Come
Yeah.
on, Mr. Carroll.
I'm
Come
just-
on.
I guess beauty is in the eye of the beholder, if I would say, but, quite candidly, I think we do a very good job on reclamation, and you've got examples that we showed you on the sand and gravel sites, and, we've done quarry reclamation as well and won awards for that work as well.
Right, but I've got a 92 Honda sitting in my yard, and
Yeah.
I've got a Cadillac sitting in my yard. When people come to visit, I put the Cadillac in front of the Honda because it's a better looking car. Okay, so what I'm asking again is, are there any reclamation projects that you've worked on that have not been so successful?
Not that I'm aware of, no, sir.
None.
Not Vulcan sites.
None.
Not Vulcan sites that I'm aware of. Again, I think Mr. Payne hit on it. We've got a reputation in this industry to try to uphold, and we're as good as the sites that we leave our legacy behind. We're in the communities for a long time. We want those to be basically poster child for what a company with our caliber and the kind of people that we have working for us are going to be able to leave as a legacy behind it. That's why we think that we've got a great project here and have an opportunity to raise the bar on what has been done.
So far you've been perfect.
I would say we've never been perfect. No one
Well,
that
that's
is
what
a
I'm
human
asking.
is a human's involved. No one's perfect in that regard. But we strive to be the best that we can be.
Right, I understand, Mr. Carroll. So I'm going to ask my question.
Yes,
if
sir.
If you've worked on 50 mining sites, that's my question. I mean, I'm just making.
I guess I personally
You've
had
done that.
I personally had experience with hundreds of mining sites in my career.
No, just for Vulcan.
Just for Vulcan, I don't know if there's been 50 that have been reclaimed during, because these things have a long life, and I've only
Right.
been there 15 years. But
Correct.
the ones that I've had experience with, the ones with Curls Neck, New Post, and other ones, I think they're very exemplary.
Okay, that's what okay. So you're right now, your track record is 100%.
I think we do a very good job. Yes,
Okay,
sir.
that's what I wanted to hear you say.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
We got there. Second question, I guess, for Mr. Payne. The archaeological survey that was conducted on the property, there is some question about archaeological find or materials there. Can you speak to that a little bit about
Sure.
what Vulcan is willing to do if they do find?
Sure. Well, we performed what is called a Phase 1A, which is a diligent research of DHR archives of identifiable or identified historical sites. I'm sure you got a copy of Ms. Kilpatrick's letter, which
Right,
showed
that's
up
what
today.
Yes.
She actually confirmed what we found. This was part of their archives. We are not, the special exception area, our special exception area is not, that site is not included within our special exception area. In fact, it's about 500 feet away. So we performed a Phase 1A. Again, it's a study of the archives at DHR. Our consultants, Gray and Pape, walk the site, shovel and analyze the site, obviously, and then we went a little further than that because we had found that one site, wanted to make sure we were absolutely sure that that wasn't a vital site. We shoveled that site in addition every number of feet just to make sure that there was not a vital area there. You know, the big thing about farming that's been happening for centuries is the land has been tilled up. And it's in this particular area, if you even look back as far as 1937, even then the Smithsonian didn't think that that was a viable site. So what we have done is we kind of went beyond sort of the requirements just to make sure, because we're making a heck of an investment, making a $10 million investment there. We want to make sure that we're not coming upon certain vital sites. Then as we move forward, as Ms. Kilpatrick provided her letter and confirmed, as we have confirmed, when we go and get our permitting from the Army Corps of Engineers and from VMRC, they will require us to do a phase 1. So we'll go an extra step. And Vulcan is excellent in what they do as they move forward through the extraction process. You may be familiar with this in our application. We're doing this pretty much on a continuum basis at 40 acres at a time, which is in our conditions, which we're limited to. Before, our policy has always been, before we go to the next 40 acres, we make sure that we're not coming upon vital areas. So we do some shovel testing at that point too. So we could actually have a layer on top of a layer through our process. State law governs and dictates anything that's found, burial sites, etc. Graham Pape's consultant is here, and she can explain if you have questions about that detail. That's a very, very detailed, extensive process that's governed by state law.
Is your tugboat captain still here? Is he here?
I'm sorry? Tugboat captain?
Captain's here. Captain. How you doing today, sir? Mr. Garnett?
Glasgow.
Glasgow. How long have you been tugboat captain?
15 years.
15 years. How many accidents have you had?
I had an incident about 15 years ago, sailboat running through my barge. That's it. That's
the only one you've had in 15 years?
Yeah. I mean, it's tugboat.
No, I don't know. I try.
It's only, it's the only accident that, of any substance. I've hit channel buoys before and stuff like that over the years, but
okay,
that's about it.
You said the sailboat ran into your barge.
Sure did. This was out in the middle of Chesapeake Bay. It wasn't in a tight river. Perfect night, everything.
I have one question for Mr. Balkmeister.
Mr. Bachmeister?
If he wouldn't mind.
You are kind of the applicant, owner. If you don't mind, we'd appreciate you take a couple of questions from Mr.
Yes, sir. Mr. Balkmeister, how long have you been on this property?
Since bought it in late 82 and moved late summer, early fall 85.
You farmed the property prior to this, is that correct?
Yes.
You consider yourself a good neighbor?
I think so.
Okay. Honest person?
Yes, sir.
That's all I need to know.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Underwood. Mr. Popowitz?
Yes, sir. Mr. Payne, can you, just for the record, you guys are an S&P 500 company.
That's correct.
That's right. You're publicly traded.
That's correct.
That's right. And so you have an obligation as an S&P 500 company to tell the truth in the operations that you give and the information you give to us. Is
That's
that
correct.
Okay. And I think, I don't know, do you feel like you have prepared and done your due diligence on this project?
I would say that is correct. You know, this application process has been a good one. I think it's been good for both sides. There's been lots of information, lots of science, lots of facts, lots of data, lots of analysis provided to the county because the county has asked some really good questions. They've asked some tough questions. They've been very engaged and diligent in this process, and we think we've responded from anything from water quality to air issues to environmental issues, et cetera, to our mining operations, et cetera. We hope that we have provided the information that the county has desired.
And one more thing. Can we get you guys to kind of go through the process you're going to follow if this is approved? far as the progression of the site from, say, beginning to end?
I'll let Mr. Carroll answer that question.
Mr. Popowitz, are you talking about